Hello everybody, I am streaming live from Bucharest, Romania. I am at TI. We are at the conclusion of the group stage, and in front of you, the most picked heroes of the group stage of TI thus far. And this video is just going to serve as a highlight for some of the most defining meta heroes, why they're the most broken heroes, and what you can expect to see moving into the playoffs as the meta has definitely unfolded. We'll highlight 3 heroes with specific examples, and we're going to talk about a bunch of the ones right at the top, so hopefully you guys can, you see the numbers, but at least get a little bit of input on exactly why we see these numbers.
Banana slam jam.
Coming in at the most picked heroes, Elder Titan, and I'm going to talk about exactly what we've seen this patch that makes him so broken. So recently they gave him a pretty nice buff, which it was at the beginning of 7.30, which makes his Astral Spirit buff last 10 seconds rather than 8. This was a significant buff to his laning stage, as when you read all this description, Elder Titan, one of the least understood heroes, I would say, across the Dota community, is it gives him armor and damage every creep and hero that his spirit passes through. So this buffs his laning stage, this buffs his team fighting, and it just buffs really every stage of this hero's game. So next, we're going to talk about the ability that really defines Elder Titan, is Natural Order, which if he's standing next to you, he removes all of your base armor and all of your base magic resistance. If he is separated from his spirit, his actual hero removes the armor, and his spirit removes your magic resistance. So Elder Titan is really well coupled with one physical damage hero, or to run at one hero on the enemy team and remove all their armor, or with long range magic damage, because he can toss his spirit out, and whoever the spirit is near will have a 0% magic resistance. So as you see in the draft we see from T1, they've got Shaker, Lina, Snapfire to pair really well with Elder Titan. And now we're going to see, on top of all these nice things that they've given him, what happens when he gets an Ags and a Shard. So Elder Titan's predominantly played as 4 or 5. In this game, he had a little bit more farm priority, played on Zephyr as the 4. But his Ags makes it so that every hero he hits with his Astral Spirit gives him 2 seconds of BKB. And then his Aghanim's Shard allows him to switch Echo Stomp to Autocast, and when it is on Autocast, Elder Titan will take the place of the Astral Spirit when it completes the Stomp. So this effectively gives Elder Titan a built-in blink to his first spell that can't be canceled as long as he casts his spells. Elder Titan's spells are all super long cast range, and we're going to see exactly what happens when Elder Titan gets these items at 34 minutes in the game in a pretty even game. So what we're going to see is Nico Baby on the high ground, or not Nico Baby, excuse me, Limp on the high ground, safely positioned as Sniper. Look at his positioning on Elder Titan, how far away he is from this Spirit, and suddenly he's going to run at Limp. Magic immune because his Spirit gave him 8 seconds of it, with an extra 333 damage from the Spirit, and he single-handedly chunks down the enemy mid as a 4 position, completely removing him from the fight. So not only is his laning stage somewhat like an ogre, where he's going to tank for his carry, but he can also do that. Our next hero that we want to highlight is Monkey King, who, while you only see him at 31 picks so far for the group stage, he was the most picked and banned hero of the group stage. I believe his pick ban rate for across the entire duration of the group stage was 98%. So we're going to show you exactly what makes Monkey King good. But we must tell you that there's also a twist. What is this twist, you may ask? Well, I'm going to answer, says BSJ. And the answer is that Monkey King, who's getting first pick, first banned, is a flex pick nowadays, meaning that he can be played in multiple roles. And you may say, doesn't that mean he's mainly played mid or carry? And the answer is absolutely not. His main position that he has played at throughout the course of the TI group stage so far was 4 position, as we now have a replay with Yapsor on 4 position Monkey King. So what makes Monkey King such a strong support, you may ask? And the answer is look at his build right now. Pretty much all the Monkey Kings are going for Orb of Corrosion, which makes their ultimate and AoE minus armor slow, combined with items they can cast from trees. not even leveling up Jingu a decent amount of games, and they're playing purely in the trees. If you were to watch YapzOr play this entire game, along with most of the other Monkey Kings in this tournament, they are always on the trees. So imagine instead of an invisible hero, you're dealing with a hero that's constantly on trees. So for instance, in this game, Quincy Crew tried to address this Monkey King pick with a lot of burst, but they actually don't have any heroes that destroy trees, which is one of the few ways you can deal with it. However, we're going to see exactly how powerful the Monkey King being able to be on trees all the time, combined with his level 10 50% Tree Dance Vision AoE talent, just plays into competitive Dota. The job of supports is to supply vision, information, and set up their team for success. So him on the side of Secret, they were smoked up. He's going to jump on trees, get a nice high ground ward, and now Quincy Crew is going to smoke up themselves. Imagine smoking into this Monkey King who's on trees and just instantly jumps away. So that's the first part of Monkey King, which is absolutely absurd. The vision game. He will always win the vision battle, and he's one of the hardest heroes in all of Dota to smoke gank. So we already talked about the vision advantage that Monkey King provides, and now we're going to talk about how he's basically a better version of Nyx Assassin. Nyx Assassin relies on invis on a cooldown in order to hunt heroes, and oftentimes sentries can be the best counter. While Monkey King, he's the best setup hero in the game right now at the 4 position. As whenever your team's winning, even when you're behind, you play the side lanes and you just jump through the trees, setting up for kills. Give him a +1, he's almost always going to be good enough to start a gank. As you see him start on Quinn here, and he's just tossing his abilities from trees, and okay, it doesn't work. Quincy Crew responds, they bring a bunch of heroes, and there's no skin off his back. He's just going to reset. We're going to fast forward real quick. We're going to see exactly what kind of fight he's able to set up as a 4-position Monkey King with no boots, because he's always on trees, and Atos. So he's scouting out for his team. As you already saw, he's given them the vision advantage. And he always leads off with Boundless Strike, which allows one of his teammates to easily follow him up, Atosing the Earthshaker, forcing the retreat from Quincy Crew. And this is just all because of a Monkey King who's just being a complete nuisance. And then obviously during his ultimate, he gets free armor. So it's almost impossible to want to commit onto a 30 armor support when he has literally no armor items. You know, he's a +1 in terms of setting up, like you just saw right there. But now we're going to see Nisha TP to top half of the map, and we're going to see just how quickly Monkey King gets around. He TP's top, jumps from tree to tree, jumps from tree to tree, connects to his mid laner. So not only is he the best setup hero, but he's also one of the best follow-up heroes because he's incredibly mobile around the map. Monkey King is sitting at a whopping 61% win rate despite being first pick, first banned every single game. I would deem him probably the most broken hero at TI. The next hero I would like to highlight is Tiny, who is the second most picked and banned hero when you add up all the games. And he's been picked 44 times, first pick, first banned every single game, with a win rate of 57%. So he's not quite as high as Monkey King, but the fact that he's being picked every game is a telltale sign of how good he is. Now, he's basically the opposite of Monkey King in regards to the fact that they're both flexed very often as 1 and 4, but Monkey King has been picked almost always as a 4, while Tiny's been almost always picked as a 1, and unless it's incredibly hard countered, which it has been demoted to 4, and then it's still amazing because you have a support Tiny. But we're going to see exactly what makes core Tiny so broken. So first off, other than the fact that he has 0 armor, he starts with 70 base damage, and his tree gives him 20% bonus damage against units. So that means at level 1 as a carry with items, he hits for 85 damage. People are going the Quelling Blade, double Gauntlet of Strength, Tango, starting item build. But what happens with Tiny is because he's such a strong laner, and he plays off map most of the game, we're going to look at his items here. This is a pretty common Tiny build. Not everyone goes Soul Ring, but it's the Echo Saber into Silver Edge, and oftentimes around the 20-minute mark, you'll get a Shard and a BKB at the same time. So before 20 minutes, Tiny's like a poor man's Finn, because he only has 5 attacks of his tree grab. But after he gets the 20-minute Shard, which people are going for every single game, causes tree grab to have no charge limit, he's a way better version of Sven because he doesn't rely on his ultimate as a cooldown, builds similar items, and he has 350 attack range, and he also has a bunch of free armor And his talents are also pretty nice as the game goes on. The tree grab unit damage bonus and the 15% status resistance at level 20. But this is the power spike that Tiny hits at 20 minutes into the game. And this is pretty much what always happens. In this game, they're up by 6k, and it's not uncommon for Tiny to be winning on LGD's side here. But we're going to see exactly what happens if you're losing to a Tiny at 20 minutes into the game. So as we fast forward, he's going to queue up the shard immediately, buying it, and LGD is just going to force an objective. So now they're going to take a free Rosh. So after Tiny gets a shard, most lineups have paired him with at least one buff. We've seen Io, Ogre, Magnus, in this case Legion Commander, something that makes him do more damage or attack faster. And so once they get the shard and Aegis, you're just going to walk down lanes. So it's impossible to see right now because of the fact that he's using it. But if we go ahead and check out Tiny, his tree grab gives him, at max level, 180% bonus building damage. So let's just go ahead and see that in action. Now that Tiny has 26 armor, 3000 HP with only Echo Saber as his HP item, he hits for 360 damage, not counting the bonus to buildings. So this is what happens once Tiny gets shard. We're going to play it in normal speed. As 22:30 into the game, his team is going to ball down a lane. At 22:30, they group up. Tier 1 tower goes down. 30 seconds later, Tier 2 is going to go down. As I'm going to count. That was 5 hits, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That one's dead. The Silver Edge with the guaranteed crit is just the perfect item to bring this hero as a carry. Silver Edge is the best carry item of the meta. Tiny highlights that better than anyone else. So I think the only thing he had lacked prior to this patch was a really clean item build. As that Tier 3 tower is now going to die. And he's basically the best late game pusher in the game. And by late game, I mean 23 minutes into the game. As this is pretty much the story of Tiny in any game that it's having a pretty decent game. Sometimes they'll take till the second Aegis to end, but with LGD being pretty far ahead here, they're going to steamroll it into a victory. But yeah, that took 1 minute and 15 seconds for all 3 towers and a lane of racks to drop after Tiny gets Aegis and a shard. And that is exactly what makes Tiny the broken hero that he is. The other heroes I'd like to highlight, as you look at the top here, first off, Io. He's been a little bit banned, a little bit picked. Not the best win rate. A lot of Ios have been paired with Gyro, as you see 41% win rate here. And the reason I actually think Io has this low of a win rate but is better than he looks is because Gyro is overvalued, who has 18 picks with a whopping 22.22% win rate repeating, of course. If you remove the times that Io's been picked with Gyro, he's actually at about a 50% win rate, despite being prioritized very early on in the drafts. So moving into the playoffs, I expect to see a lot less Io Gyro, while still seeing a lot of Io. And the next hero that's always at TI, the 2 heroes, are Tidehunter and Earthshaker. We'll first mention Earthshaker with 47 picks and a 55% win rate. Earthshaker now is also getting played as a 3. So his laning matchups are really good against most melee cores, and they're able to go for like a much earlier blink than a 4 position would. And Earthshaker traditionally is a slow hero. They have to wait to farm that blink dagger after like the laning stage. But now most Earthshakers are coming out with it at like 12 minutes into the game, and that blink echo threat super early is incredibly scary. The Silver Edge makes Crit Shaker not a meme anymore, and then also just BKB Ags. And the hero's Ags got buffed prior to this event, making him incredibly terrifying as a core. Tidehunter got a lot of laning stage buffs. They gave him mana regen. He's predominantly getting played as an offlaner. But even though I've mentioned him 5th or 6th in this video, I actually think he's one of the most defining heroes of the meta. He's pretty much responsible for Doom and Disruptor being some of the most picked heroes of the tournament. We see Disruptor at 31 picks, 58% win rate, largely unseen before the tournament, as well as Doom at 25 picks with 60% win rate. As I have in my notes after looking through, Disruptor is all about Tide and Weaver. If we see Disruptor against Tide and Weaver, 21 of the 31 games, Weaver or Tide were involved in the draft, either Disruptor being immediately picked after the Tide and Weaver on the same team in order to cover them from a counter, or being picked against them. And I want to note that even though it's only 21 out of the 31 games, it's hard to know exactly how many games a Tide or Weaver were not picked because a Disruptor was picked before them. On the other hand, we have Doom with the 25 games. 15 out of the 25 were immediately after Tide or picked against Tide. And the reason why Disruptor and Doom are good against Tide is, let's go ahead and highlight why Tide is good. So it's no secret that Tidehunter is one of the strongest team fighters in all of Dota, one of the best 5-manners in all of Dota. And what makes Tide so good right now is that they buffed his laning phase first off. They gave him base mana regen. One of his biggest issues was getting to one of his mana regen items. In this current meta, it's a Soul Ring, before he ran out of mana. So not only does he have a better laning stage, but secondly, he's also paired very well with most 4 positions of the meta, such as Monkey King and Weaver, who rely on minus armor. We don't see a Monkey King or Weaver in this game specifically, but he pairs so well with most of the 4s that work because of Gush reducing the enemy armor, as well as Anchor Smash being... He's just a physical damage-based hero in a physical damage-based 4-position meta. As we pull up the list of the most picked heroes in the meta, Weaver, Monkey King, and Snapfire are 3 of the top 9 most popular picks, and they're all physical damage-based 4 positions, and even Elder Titan, who's sometimes played as a 4, also relies predominantly on physical damage in the laning phase. So it's a combination of Tide getting buffed himself, and then also Tide being good with what is currently good in the 4 position. And what Tide promotes, as we see in Fnatic versus Secret, is that you can just group up around him the second he gets Ravage. So we see Ravage come online, Fnatic's going to take Tier 1 bottom, and immediately after they take Tier 1 bottom, the whole of Fnatic's just going to walk at the mid tower, forcing Secret to actually fight them because they have the Ravage. Niche is actually going to get caught out here, and once they have the Ravage, it feels almost impossible to fight into. Tide's not only received buffs on his laning stage, but Kraken Shell over time has also been buffed. So they've made it so that the threshold of Kraken Shell, it used to be 600 at all levels, is now 450. And so what Kraken Shell does is it removes any negative status effects when damage crosses that threshold. So if you try to chain stun Tidehunter, it just doesn't work if he can dispel it. And there's very few game abilities in the game that cannot be dispelled, as Kraken Shell is a strong dispel. It removes all stuns, pretty much. So it just allows your team to group up super early. As long as you have 1 tower hitter, in this case the Terrorblade, they've now gotten 2 towers for free just because of their offlaner getting level 6. And it's virtually impossible to fight into at this stage in the game. And TI is always about grouping up, playing it safe, taking things methodically, and that's what makes Tidehunter always a pretty strong pick at TI, but he's also been buffed several times leading up to it. And now we're going to use Tidehunter as a source of explanation for a lot of these other heroes you're also seeing in the top picks, as Disruptor and Doom, as mentioned prior, are 2 of the only heroes in Dota with non-dispellable spells. Disruptor having AoE Static Storm, which cannot be Kraken Shelled off, as well as Doom, which is Doom, not being able to be Kraken Shelled off either. So these 2 heroes are seen a lot because of that. Weaver, my last hero I want to highlight, as is predominantly being played as a 4 position. He's just, I would say, a slightly worse version of Monkey King. Both of these supports don't need any boots. They don't provide all that much teamfight, but they're just information. Weaver's basically a bounty hunter that instead of having track, eventually turns into an oracle because he buys Acceptor, which saves his teammates, as we're going to pull up Weaver as a hero. Allows Weaver to cast time-lapse on an ally, and it also significantly reduces the cooldown. So he becomes a late-game save, and that's his teamfight impact. But in the early game, he's like a bounty hunter that has haste. So if you dust him, Sakuchi he keeps haste. And all of his spells in the laning phase have been significantly buffed. Sakuchi got less mana. Geminate attack is now toggleable, so you don't draw aggro. It's like an orb effect. And then also, the bugs are no longer blocked by damage block. So all 3 of his laning spells significantly buffed. And he is getting played as a carry sometimes, but he's predominantly being played as a 4 position at TI. So moving forward into the playoffs, I think I want to mention some sleeper picks, as I've talked about a lot of what I've seen so far. Heroes that I didn't expect to be as strong as they are, that have been rising in popularity. First and foremost, the Morphling. Whenever there's a Shaker meta, there's always going to be a Morphling meta, as the Ags Morphling Shaker combo will always be a thing. 21 picks with a 66% win rate. Another hero I want to highlight is Nature's Prophet with 16 picks and a 68% win rate. Another flex pick that's being paired oftentimes with any team fighting offlaner, as you saw there, the Tide, or team fighting mid heroes like a Kunkka, where you just group up and take towers, and it's quite reliable to do so. And we're seeing a lot of map mobility from heroes like Monkey King and Weaver being really popular, and Nature's Prophet fits that narrative just perfectly. Spectre with 15 picks and a 66% win rate. Chinese teams are really highly prioritizing Spectre. Most of the Chinese teams did really well. IG and PSG LDD topping their groups. And Spectre is a global threat where they rush the Ags. The build right now on Spectre is the Falcon Blade into Ag Scepter, and it makes it so you have a mini haunt on a 30-second cooldown. Another sleeper pick that I think a lot of people will give more credit in the playoffs is Winter Wyvern. I think it's also pretty good against Tide because you cannot crack and shell off Winter's Curse. But it's also just good against these solo carries like the Tiny, as well as the Svens of the world that want to buy Silver Edge and not as much leaning towards Blinks, because as long as you get dusted, Wyvern sees you coming through sentries. She will be able to counter-initiate, as she has only 9 picks so far, but has won 8 out of the 9 games. I guess we could say like biggest losers of TI. So like heroes that I want to make sure people avoid moving forward are Mars, 31 picks, 29% win rate. Hero we've already mentioned earlier on in the video. But Gyrocopter, probably the biggest underperformer. I think it's just the fact that his nerfs have added up a lot, and people are just countering him with AA. And he's just getting out carried. He's not hitting his timings. Morphling matches up well against him. AA matches up well against him to prevent the heal from Satanic. And he just doesn't feel like he's ever the strongest hero in the game, even with heroes like Io buffing him up. Another hero is Sand King. Offlane seems really reliable nowadays. A lot of these offlaners are super powerful from level 1. And Sand King, who's a hero that's super weak level 1, has seemingly been exploitable in the laning phase, making his team play from behind very often, which is obviously very tough on a hero that's teamfight based if you compare him to something like Tidehunter with a 37% win rate in 16 games. Another hero that I think is a bit of a bait that's pretty low down here but has been given 7 games is Skywrath Mage. 7 games, only won 2 of them. Any of these really squishy damage dealers that just get jumped, I'm not a fan. Shadow Shaman's got a decent win rate, but I don't like him either. Same with Sniper. I thought these heroes were going to be better, but with the prominence of Monkey King and Weaver as supports in almost every game, if you're a backliner that's trying to cast spells from range and you don't have a way to protect yourself, it just feels really awful. You know, the difference between Wyvern and Skywrath in this case is that Wyvern can buy out some time, and I think heroes like this will go up in priority. But any heroes that rely on backlining and positioning, it's just not possible, as you saw in that one replay of Yapsor just jumping on top of MSS. So that's the meta update for the group stage of TI10. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll be I will be paneling as well as some other things throughout the course of the main event. The main event starts October 12th. We will also be doing my Liquid Plus tournament tonight at October 11th, 9 p.m. Romanian time. So if you guys are a part of that, look forward to seeing you guys there. It'll most likely be the day of this video release. So if you guys are watching now, make sure you tune in tonight. There will be a lot of giveaways and free prizes and such. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good night. See ya. Bye.